Notice all the space behind us.
Whoa.
Space. The
Yeah,
blackness.
this is new. This is different.
It's very spacey.
Yeah. We decided to go all dark on this one.
Yep.
We're going to talk about space, spatial. When you're listening to headphones, how many people hear space, like the space in an auditorium or whatever recording was, or the original event, like especially live recordings, tend to capture the space. But a lot of playback systems won't play back the space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we should cover and talk about, because I'll bet there's a fair amount of people who, for whatever reason, might never have heard the amount of space that's in some recordings.
This is a really tricky one to capture, and I think it's hard to convey, even though conceptually it seems pretty simple, right? You go in a big auditorium or whatever, you hear the space. You hear a lot going on. You hear echoes, reverberations, and stuff like that. You could tell I'm in a big area. You go in a bathroom. It sounds small. You hear the wall right next to you and the reflections.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious in a bathroom, especially.
And the materials, yeah.
You hear the
Yeah.
room
Yeah.
hard.
You hear everything.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out you could hear that in a recording too. Maybe a little less so, depending on the recording. It's not quite that significant usually, but you could kind of get a sense for distances, placement of objects, and kind of the feel of the environment you're in.
Yeah, if you have, particularly if you come from the speaker world, and the speakers are properly set up to image and do a proper sound stage, where usually you'll space them from the wall a bit. They're not jammed in a corner somewhere. You're dealing with speakers that are set up that you have some sort of sweet spot going on at a certain distance away. They call it the equilateral triangle, right? So let's say the speakers are 8 feet apart. You're 8 foot away from either speaker. It tends to be kind of optimal, which of course that's a variation. Very
depends on the speaker,
the room, all kinds of stuff. But let's say, for example, you have a properly set up 2-channel system. Though that system will produce space. In fact, if they're spread out from the wall, you'll have depth behind the speaker, which basically means you place the singer. The singer would tend to be more forward of, say, the drummer, who's behind the singer. And then when you hear that, right? You can appreciate depth to imaging.
But not all stuff's recorded like that, though. Sometimes there was wacky stuff from the 60s where stuff's like over there, but that's a different
and synthesized
thing.
music.
Right.
Nowadays it could be anywhere, but then you got the opposite effect too. Now, the mastering side of things is starting to get more and more attuned to Atmos, where they can literally place things anywhere in a 3D.
Yeah, you
space.
make the space up.
Yeah.
It's fake space.
And of course, some are better at it than others, so therefore it does sound fake.
Yeah.
And it could mess with a good stereo image. But bottom line is that there's this space in a lot of recordings, and even around each instrument. If they're miking an instrument, or if they're miking with vocals, right? You can hear in a properly set up system. You should be able to hear around the instrument. You hear the space in between. In a live band or something, between the singers, they call it a black space in between, which most people never hear.
Well, the thing is, it seems like the easiest way to usually get that sound is the simplest setup. Be in a space and put like 2 mics in it.
Yeah.
Nothing's fake. Not everybody's not recorded separately in like a booth and everything, and you got to put it all together.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people like Jazz at the Pawn Shop, right? It was like simply recorded the tape with like 2 mics. Yeah. And you could hear like people talking in the background, and then whatever was happening, plates clanging and stuff.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool. If no one's ever heard Jazz at the Pawn Shop.
It was the simple recording of a space, right? And you could hear it like that.
And there was a lot of stuff done like that. Goes way back. The early recordings, a lot of them were 1 or 2 microphone recordings. Right. They had back then it was mono. The stuff from the 50s, right? They didn't even have 2 speakers.
Yeah, how do you get space with mono?
They're trying to get space out of mono.
Well, that's a problem.
Now that's a whole different discussion. But you could talk to people who have mono, who actually do have mono systems, who play mono albums, and they do claim you get depth out of it and stuff like that, which you can. Some preamps allow you to go mono. You can actually change to mono, which I guess mixes both left and right channels somehow to give you mono. And so left-right speakers are receiving the same information.
Yeah, but especially on headphones, like you listen to mono and it's like
with headphones it wouldn't work. Yeah, that's the one thing that speakers have going for them is because they're in a room, and your room can somewhat recreate a space.
Well, it is a space,
right? Well, it is a space.
Yeah, you cheat a little bit with speakers.
Yeah.
You have space.
Yeah, that helps.
Headphones, though, it's
Right. With
Yeah,
smush.
it's the size of the ear pads that give you the difference.
Yeah, so that brings us to what we can do with ours, because I think, especially like the 1266 is just crazy for that. It's known for that. You spread them out, you can spread them out on your head and create a space. And where all the headphones are clamping to your head and the driver's, an inch or so away, so many centimeters. The drivers in a headphone are so close that there's no space to create.
Well, it's like IEM's like the opposite direction, right? And that's why a lot of people, don't like them because, everything's in your head because they're literally jammed in your ears, right?
Yeah, the ear canal doesn't make for much of space.
Yeah.
It's too tiny, so it can't, there's no cavernous sound coming from your ear canal. Well, it shouldn't be, unless your head's empty. But that's the cool, somewhat, we could call it a parlor trick, but we've learned some of the ways in order to design an overall headphone system where you can get depth, that third dimension out of the headphone, where you're not just wide and tall, but the sound goes out. And like the 1266 is known to be like maximize that, right? You can just basically you hear the room boundaries of the recording on that headphone. If like you were talking about like recording in a bathroom.
Uh-huh.
The reason it sounds like, remember back in the day, if someone walked in a bathroom on their cell phone, the old cell phones, you'd know they were in a bathroom because you could just hear it on the phone.
Well, they were analog.
Yeah, right. So now they cancel the room.
Yeah, now it's like everybody's like, oh, you can't tell where I am right now? It's like, no, you could be in like the factory and everything's banging. It's like,
yeah, I mean, and that's the room sound. And recordings, I mean, a lot of recordings are done in much larger rooms and they're padded and, they have, but yet they do have boundaries. And particularly live, I mean, you can hear reflections off of people. You can hear reflections off of things in the room, glass, windows, things like that. Mm-hmm. And, that kind of stuff usually gets buried somewhere. Like it never makes it to the playback chain. You never hear it, but it's there. It was captured by the mics.
It tends to be one of the most challenging things to do well. And I think for people that care about it, it can be one of the biggest differences between just your standard off-the-shelf, entry-level consumer headphones and a really well-tuned, high-end headphone system. Because anything under a few $100s, if it has any space, it's most likely digital. It's generated through some sort of algorithm. And sometimes it works well, but plenty of times it's very fake sounding.
It's adding a little bit of artificial ambiance.
Yeah. That was the big thing with like AirPods Max. Like you listen to everything in like spatial audio, and some tracks were okay, and others are like.
There was even the rare one. I heard a few that are actually pretty cool.
Yeah, some are fine
with those, and it's actually a cool effect.
Yeah,
but most of the time it's just bad.
I have an old pair of Sony wirelesses that are connected to the TV, and they're great for that because you can hit the button on the thing. And
they're like 5.1.
It's got like a base unit
right?
with HDMI inputs. Yeah. So it allows you to create more space, and it's actually a really nice effect if you're watching TV. I wouldn't really use it for music, because it just messes with the imaging. But it's pretty cool if you're watching TV, because TV can be very flat sounding to begin with, But bottom line is that in the headphone world, there really is probably less than you can count on one hand headphones, that are really really good at playing back the spatial information in a recording. I mean, really giving it to you out to the room boundaries. It's extremely difficult to do in a headphone, again, because it's a headphone. It's local. It's playing right near your ears. And this is a monster at that with depth. And something like the Diana DZ, these are like depth monsters in terms of being able to go out beyond the headphone boundary on depth, which gives you that sense of, okay, I have a vocalist, and then I have drums, and I have whatever else is going on in the space that was recorded. And it's a pretty cool thing when you hear it. Tubes do this too. Mm-hmm. Tubes help a lot recreate space.
Now what you do is you put the ported pads on there with some tubes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pretty spacey then.
Yeah. Some people have been using I think the WA22, the Woo amps works really well with that. On up, the higher end stuff is really good for that. Amps and Sounds got some baller amplifiers.
Thing's huge.
Yeah, it's a 100-pound amp, but we've tried it on the 1266 and on the DZ, and space for days. You've got the DAC has to be top shelf though too. In order to really, really do this, unfortunately, you're usually looking at a hell of a nice DAC. I'm talking like 10, 15 grand and up DACs usually go. It's just
Not
tiny
necessarily,
information.
but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
External clocks help a
They
lot.
do, they do.
On my Lena setup, I can turn off the external clock and turn it on, right,
But
just from the menu.
That's for just that last little bit, though.
Yeah, but
It's not gonna, like-
that improves the space,
Yeah.
the spatial information in on playback
Mhm.
with the external clock in or out. It's pretty dramatic when you get the cabling and stuff right with it. It's pretty dramatic, and you know, versus not having the external clock, just using whatever the DAC has for an internal. So you know, I mean, you look at that overall. Well, first of all, you look at it and see how complicated it is to get it.
Mhm.
And therefore, you got to almost realize that most people probably never heard that sense of space, unless you have a nice speaker system and you've done it before.
Well,
You know.
and it just comes down to the track. I mean,
Yeah.
depends what you. If you don't listen to stuff that's like recorded with that, well,
True.
there's no way to recreate something that's not there.
There are some flat recordings in the world.
So-
You know, the other thing to consider too would be not only is it the recording, and the system,
Mm.
and the cabling, and the transducers in the headphone have to be pretty well optimized to get this really hearing. But you know, more importantly is that, like we were just talking about, track by track, some stuff just might not have it, and others would be like where it's, I think where it's most noticeable. Especially I've been listening to DZ a lot lately, and where it's most noticeable is when a track does have it.
Yeah,
It's like,
you
whoa.
notice it. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you switch it, it's like ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like wow, and that wow factor, even like changing between like the different streaming services
Yeah.
like Tidal and Qobuz and stuff, will actually change that sense of space.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild.
Mhm.
So, but again, you know, a lot of people would never hear that change because the headphone or the playback system isn't doing it.
I think it's a
So
little more complicated than that, though,
it could be.
because plenty of times you could get the impression that there is a streaming service that maybe has better space or has a better format for space or something like that. But it really seems more likely that they probably just have a different master or a different version of the track
Could be.
that happens to have more space. At
That
least
does
that's been
seem
my
to be the
experience.
case. Yeah.
Because I haven't been able to make it definitive. This one's better as a streaming service.
I think as a general rule, the higher resolution, the better.
Well,
in terms
generally,
of, in
yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
the music.
Right.
but
But
you know.
what if it's a different track though?
sometimes
Right.
you get that.
Right.
So
Well, the-
Says the same thing.
Well,
but it's different.
the real way to just iron this all out is to actually have a physical copy of the disc,
well,
right? Or download a
Mhm.
downloaded file where you have.
yeah, you know
if you
it's
have
the same one.
especially a high res download,
Yeah.
you're avoiding whatever the hell some processing somebody did somewhere in between, right? Because you have what the studio would consider to be the master, right? If you have a
Well,
high
it doesn't
res,
change at
if
least.
you have
Well,
a-
yeah.
right? If you have a high res file, right, or a Blu-ray, or even a CD if that's all that's available, or of course, heaven forbid if you had a master tape, a master
Yeah.
copy.
That's pretty rare. But
You know, yeah. But I mean, no, those would be optimal for sure. That would just avoid all the.
yeah, a lot of variables are avoided by just having the physical.
Yeah, we
media.
We had the master tape of Led Zeppelin, one of the master tapes from Warner Studios,
Yeah.
in our room in Can-Jam right in New York. That was awesome. People were hearing that, they're like, oh, I mean, it's pretty cool to hear
Well, most people have not heard it.
a master tape from the actual Led Zeppelin recording. I forget what album was that?
Mm.
Zeppelin too.
Too,
Zeppelin 2? Yeah. It was pretty cool.
Well, maybe only 50 people heard it there, but
Yeah, right. Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we couldn't go through that.
But those that did go, whoa. And I mean, you know, that kind of that isolates and shows you what the music actually sounds like versus going through all these various streams and formats and whatever it takes to get to you to go from digital to analog.
I think that's the biggest thing is the variables. You don't know what they are really.
Yeah.
You don't know what any forgiven streaming service
it makes
is
everything
doing.
impossible. Everything's always so challenging because oftentimes, even with streaming services, on the same streaming service, sometimes the track changes or the format changes over time. Isn't always constant. And of course, sometimes they remove it. That's always fun.
And then there are, of course, we always have DACs as a variable too. Some DACs treat different sampling rates different.
Yeah.
Right.
They treat different sampling rates differently than how other DACs
They have
do.
filters that are only
you know?
enabled
Yeah,
in
right.
certain formats
Yeah, and
things.
settings and so on, and
Yeah.
or they might even have multiple DACs within the DAC, and one does DSD and one does PCM, and so it's it's tricky.
upsampling and all that. You know,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of
And
variables.
most people aren't paying any attention to that. I mean, you're going through between tracks on a streaming service.
Yeah.
What the hell do you know?
I know, like
Yeah.
at least in my car, I was using I switched to Tidal for a little bit, and I switched away from it again because the problem was the inconsistency between tracks. Some would sound great, then others would be like, "Oh, I don't like this."
You almost
So I
need
didn't like the
every streaming
inconsistency.
service.
Yeah,
Just have them all.
know
and then
which
you-
track goes.
You
for
do a
which
taste
one.
test
Yeah,
on every album, every artist.
Well,
That's
that's
a lot
why
of work.
I always revert back, because I've been doing this a long time. I revert back to basically my CDs
well,
collection,
that
which, I
hasn't
mean,
changed.
which a while ago I've put to, all the
Yeah.
CDs were burned onto, original file formats put onto hard drive, and then something like a streaming deck like the Lena or something like that. Any of the streaming decks can just get it right off your NAS drive in your home or something. So you're playing the digital file stored locally,
Mhm.
and that just to me that's the reference. That's to me that was the recording that all these other streaming services are obviously giving you, And they've done some of the stuff, the older stuff, they've remastered, but that doesn't really always help in this case. Having multiple versions of the same recording mastered differently.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes they fix issues. Other
Sometimes.
times they make new ones.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've been
Same old
noticing it
tale.
like in Apple's playlists. They like to pepper in different versions all the time,
Yeah,
and it's always like, I know this song, but this isn't how it sounds.
yeah.
And that happens like surprisingly a lot in random playlists. They have like a totally different version.
Yeah, some anniversary edition
Yeah,
or something.
Yesterday I was driving the Cybertruck,
Whoa.
and on the screen, I think it was Tidal I was on. No, yeah, it was Tidal. I think so. It said high res next to one track, and I don't remember ever seeing that before.
Yeah, it says it.
It was an older track too, yeah?
Yeah.
It's the first time I saw it on
They
the
all
screen.
don't.
It'll
say
do
that.
if you
Yeah.
stream it over Wi-Fi.
So it's rare to see that, but I saw that, and so it's kind of cool. I don't know if it changed anything being in the car or not. It's
It
not
stores it on the flash drive in the car when you download it over Wi-Fi. So if you're connected to Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
or you connect to it like your phone as a hotspot,
Huh,
it'll stream
fancy.
high res.
Yeah. Wonder what it sounds like when you play that back.
It's
You
not a
could
big
try.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to try that. but anyway, back to the spatiality of it all. It comes back to, it boils down to how good your system really is, how well you tweaked it out, the recording, does it have the information there, and to what level. To me, all recordings, if they actually recorded the instruments, if you're actually playing the instruments, all recordings have a pretty good amount of detail there. You know what I mean? You can hear. A good
Well,
play, but you could hear
Unless they
around
were
the instrument.
actively
Yeah.
trying not to do that.
Well, yeah. You could-
Isolate
you could
everybody as much
flat
as
it.
possible.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
Which happens when the recording's done in different locations.
Well, that too.
You
Yeah.
got a guy playing a piano in one part of the country or world, and another one playing guitar, and
Yeah.
someone puts it all together. Now they almost have to strip the space. They have to congeal it somehow.
Yeah, 'cause
right?
it all
the
sound-
spaces are all different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, and you can hear that too on some recordings.
Sure.
On a really good system, you can hear, if one instrument was recorded in a different space than the other, and they didn't
Yeah.
make that whole like they do now digitally.
Right.
You can
Well,
hear that.
It's kind of like in movies when they dub stuff over, and you could tell it's like, well, that wasn't recorded when.
Yeah, when they mess up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then
Yeah,
the
we'll
section
just-
sounds
yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's extreme.
Yeah.
but-
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, go back
Some
to
are
the old,
done better than
old
others.
sci-fi flicks from the '60s and stuff. There's horrible sound effects.
Yeah. Well, that.
You know,
That's a
You
different.
could hear
thing.
like the guy
make
like
twisty
hitting the
things in a-
floor or
in a-
something while he's trying to make a different noise.
yeah. Or they'd use toilet bowls for echo, and stick things inside the.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very hands-on back then.
Yeah. They did what they had to do. They didn't have.
Yeah.
They didn't have digital effects. But yeah. But anyway, I think everyone gets the idea, and they're probably thoroughly bored out of their minds at this point with the spatial thing. But it's real. And if you haven't heard it yet, and you get a chance, check out a really good system, either speakers or headphones at a nearby specialty shop, dealer.
Yeah,
or
it's
hell-
super obvious with the right track and the right system. You don't need to think much about it. It's
No.
this sounds like there's like room and space.
Totally cool. It's really cool. And the only issue with it, once you hear it, is there's no going back.
Well.
Everything else will sound
Flat.
2D
Yeah.
in comparison.
Right.
So, yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care of yourself.